Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation, the great debate, but it could only be either of those if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. The number to ring is 44208-601-4555. You call us, we'll call you back, establish a clear line, and remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be down at 0. Or you can SMS the show, and the best of those will come up here on the comment wall. That number is 447800008066. Or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. You can even send me a tweet at comment_presstv. Tonight, we're talking about Iran and the United States, two countries who for more than 33 years have been inextricably connected, though unfortunately most often with the United States offering nothing but aggression and sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the P5+1 negotiations with Iran, I think the outcome was a satisfactory one. I think that the Iranian negotiators have done a very good job indeed. If that puts me on one side of an argument in Iran, well, I'm sorry, but I can only say what I think. And I think that the negotiators, in winning a 7-month extension in the issue of Iran's nuclear power program, have done a good job. And of course, some sanctions since January have been loosened, though the most important ones have not. And Iran, ordinary people in Iran, the Iranian economy, are all still badly affected by the sanctions that the United States and its allies have been imposing. But it's been a better year on that front than previous years. And over the next 7 months, I hope that an agreement can be reached that sees the lifting of all of these sanctions. You would have thought that most sensible people in the world would have welcomed the decisions of the P5+1 Iran negotiations, but that was not actually the case. In Israel, the agreement went down like a lead balloon. And in Congress and Senate and on the Hill, as they put it, in Washington, which is sometimes called Israeli-occupied territory, there was a predictable chorus of people who wanted not fewer but more sanctions on Iran over the next 7 months. Like that's going to encourage Iran to negotiate a better deal for them. The very opposite is the case. In fact, the Iranian negotiators are under more pressure from people and political organizations in Iran who think that the negotiators have, if anything, been too soft. So it's very clear from the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who made it clear that he welcomed the 7-month extension, but that Iran would not accept any harsh demands. And I'm here to tell anyone out there who doubts that, then you should stop doubting it, because Iran has gone as far as it is ready to go. It has an inalienable right to develop peaceful nuclear power, and it intends to do so, whatever Israel and the United States hawks think. A whole plethora of Republican congressmen and senators were out there after the agreement demanding more sanctions. But who is benefiting from these sanctions? The Western economies are on their knees. How does it serve their people to be going around the world imposing sanctions on people? Still less, increase sanctions on people. Are the neighbors gaining? Are the Arab countries in the Persian Gulf benefiting from those sanctions on Iran? I want to hear your point of view on that. And the second subject is America. Why do Americans need so many guns? Why do they use so many guns? All eyes are currently focused on the events in Ferguson, Missouri. There have been 400 arrests in 100 different cities in the United States as the black people and poor people in America react to the fact that in the United States of Barack Obama, you better not show up on the street if you're black and poor, because you really do run the risk of simply being gunned down. Michael Brown was just that. He was gunned down by a police officer for no reason. And yet a grand jury decided not to indict him, not to charge him, and indeed there are some in the United States, and some idiots on this side of the Atlantic, actually praising the officer. There's footage emerged in the last few days of a 12-year-old boy, being shot dead by police officers because he was carrying a toy gun of the kind many of our children routinely carry. They didn't ask any questions. They just fired. They drew up in their car, and within a second of having got out of the car, they shot this 12-year-old kid dead. And of course, not a week goes by without somebody in a school, a college, a university, a shopping mall, a cinema, any public place, everywhere in the United States, where people are not opening fire willy-nilly on members of the public and massacring them. Now, Barack Obama, after the tremendous massacre a year and a bit ago at Sandy Hook, said that he was going to tackle this problem. But just like the pledge to close Guantanamo Bay, it was another empty, hopeless, useless promise from a president whose presidency is sinking in disgrace. In response to the grand jury's decision in Ferguson, Missouri, even though he himself is black, even though he could have been Michael Brown when he was a young man, he backed the court, backed the grand jury, backed the police. If you look at the pictures from Ferguson, the United States looks like a war zone. Really. It's not police officers as you and I came to know them in the cops and robbers shows in American TV in the past. These are people done up like special forces, armored, heavily armed, weaponized, and shooting first and asking questions later. So, why do Americans need so many guns? No other developed society in the entire world allows anybody, everybody, more or less, to buy and possess firearms. It's even in their constitution that their people are entitled to arm themselves. And since the events in Ferguson, there's been a massive increase in the number of Americans buying guns. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% increase. Maybe even more than that. So I'm asking, what is it about America that they need so many guns? Mohammed in Birmingham's got a point of view. That'll be Birmingham, England, rather than Alabama, I think. Mohammed, welcome to the show. Hello, Mohammed.
Hello, yeah. Can you hear me, George?
I can. You're on the air. Thanks very much. It is Birmingham, UK.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Mohammed.
George, I would like to comment. I listened to everything which you just said, and that's an honor for me that I got a chance to listen to you in start.
Thank you.
I would just like to start off by mentioning America, that why the police has been given loaded guns and why do they want to increase it? And surprisingly, just 5 minutes before I called, I was on a bus and I read this statement on Facebook where a person, Englishman named as Lewis, who fatally killed a disabled black man, and he was not charged. But on the other hand, in comparison, there was a black man who just hit a person who was a white man, and the person was not dead, but he has been charged. As you mentioned in your statement, that this was before the grand jury, the recent case, which has just been done with a little child who was a black, and the person has been set free. The jury decided not to make him guilty.
Yeah.
But the question is...
Not to face trial, not to be charged. He won't even be tried.
Exactly. But the question arises, was the jury unbiased? Because I studied law myself. I'm going to be barrister myself soon. But I just want to ask, because I've studied everything, whether the jury can be biased or whether they can't be.
Well,
because
I have no doubt whatsoever that the jury, because all the power in Ferguson, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis, I have no doubt at all that the grand jury reflected the prejudice of the city government and the state government in Missouri. Missouri is deep Ku Klux Klan racist territory, deep.
But other than the jury, I would just like to mention what they did with the other people, what they did with the Indian, the diplomatic person. She went there, what they did with her on the airport. The video was released. She was shouting. A tube was, they moved a tube into her body just to make a check of cavity. Means they don't treat people as a human, to be honest. As a person was found, was a student in America. His mobile, they said that the bombastical, the particles on his mobile phone, and they made him guilty. They made him charged, despite that there was no evidence at all, just on the basis of suspicion.
And this is with a black president, Mohammed. A black president. Unbelievable. Thanks for the call. Gary in Halifax. Not Halifax in England this time, but in Nova Scotia. Gary, go ahead.
Good day, George. Glad to be back.
So nice to hear from you again. We've missed you, man.
I just recently returned from the benighted States of America, just last night. And I can tell you the atmosphere over this mess in Ferguson has not fooled all that many people. I mean, the eruption of protest was nationwide, every single state, more than one city in many states. People know exactly what the issue is, but they're constantly being denied by the executive arm of the state, and the police are part of that executive arm. The absolute gall of proposing to go through a grand jury process when the bias was already there, and the way in which the prosecutor was permitted to manipulate the grand jury proceedings was utterly outrageous. You're not supposed to convene such things except to consider whether a charge is to be laid. You're not supposed to hold the trial in miniature, both sides. That's not the role of a grand jury. You can't even fire the prosecutor. He's elected. You can fire him at the next election, but you can't do anything about his competence and his choice of methods at the time that he does these things. So the whole thing is just, typical case of American blind justice, as one of the folk singers used to say.
What about what about the grand jury? Do we ever know? I don't know the system. Do we ever know who's on that grand jury? Do we know, for example, if it was a largely white jury?
We know that it was, there were three persons of color and 9 white people, and this is a smaller than usual grand jury. For something like this, the usual grand jury size would be over 20 people. For example, in the state of New York and places like that I know a bit better, a 23-person grand jury is not an uncommon thing. I forget how many it was in Florida to deal with that horrible case there, but it was not 12. It was like 16 or 17. So the process is open to a lot of manipulation.
Gary, fabulous to hear from you again. That was Canada. This is the United States. Ali is in New York. Ali, why do you Americans need so many guns?
I think, Mr. Jha, there are 2 or 3 things, and if you give me a little bit of time, I'll tell you I have a little bit of experience. I'm actually a physician, and I'm part of American Academy of Pediatrics, which actually gives the suggestions to the parents that they should not have guns at their homes. So if you give me a little bit of time, I'll explain to you. First of all, I think this is not needed at all. From my personal thing, I think it's that people don't believe in the system. That's why they need these guns too, and they say we need to protect us. There are a few states who allows guns to have, and there are a few which doesn't allow to have guns. So it's actually both ways. But more, which we came to know last year, there was an incident in Newton where there were like 26 or 25 people, like students were dead because of this incident. And following that incident, American Academy of Pediatrics, which is a very high authority in such kind of advocacy, they drafted a legislation and put it to the Congress that these guns should be banned to save the children of this nation. But guess what? This legislation was, it was not, it was just canceled. I mean, it was not passed. And then later on, the president came to, and he actually explained to that why this was not passed, because there was money funneled from these firms who are actually own these gun companies, which is just a shame.
And then there's the National Rifle Association, the NRA.
Yes. So I think this is not needed at all. Like I'm a physician. Doing my part every day, I ask parents, "Do you have guns at home?" And then I counsel them that please do these things to save your children. I mean, why would you not pass a legislation in which you should not be allowed if you are concerned about the safety of your children at home? And it's not at home only. It's like whenever you have something, you get outrageous and go outside and do whatever you want to do.
Well, since Columbine, which is my earliest memory, if you like, but there must have been hundreds, thousands of such things in the past, it's been one massacre after another, and yet no lesson is ever learned. And President Obama pledged after the Sandy Hook incident, in which God knows a ghastly number of children were murdered, massacred in their school, but nothing has changed. And you saw the figures there on the screen. I underestimated them considerably. There's been a 600% increase in the sales of guns in Missouri since the grand jury result.
Yep.
Ali, thanks for that call. I'm going to the Netherlands. Mohammed is in the Netherlands. Mohammed, go ahead.
Okay. I have some question about the sanction. So everybody looking over sanction the five countries.
Yeah.
That is the United Nations, Great Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China.
Yeah.
But we are talking about the sanction talking only for around the world. So nobody going to the United Nations, but sanction coming for the United Nations. So why are we going to everybody going to the open declaration about the sanction talking inside the United Nations? Why we should come in Europe or Middle East or somewhere else? So what is the reason? Then is we are looking for the sanction in United Nations. They mentioned all the time in the sanction coming for the United Nations. If they're coming for the United Nations, we have to talk inside the United Nations. Am I right?
Yes, you are. And I've long campaigned for the United Nations to be relocated in Geneva, possibly, where some of its organs already are. There is no case for compounding the overweening influence of the United States by actually having the United Nations based there. That's undoubtedly true. But it does seem to me that President Obama himself would quite like to reach an agreement with Iran. The problem is the United States politics is infested with the most rabid, hawkish, right-wing Zionist elements who are constantly seeking to exacerbate relations between the United States and Iran. Don't you think?
That is the giant. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Mohammed, thanks for that call. We've been to Canada. We've been to the United States. We've been to Netherlands. Let's stay in the UK for a few minutes. Nana is in the UK. Nana, welcome.
Good day, good evening. Thank you very much, George.
You're welcome, madam. Go ahead.
About these shootings in the United States, you know that many people think that it's in the world of masquerade we live in. It wouldn't be surprising anyway. Many people say that these are masquerades too, and that is to trigger the need for everybody to go run and buy more weapons before the law changes and before the article of the Constitution changes. And to me, honestly, watching all these masquerades, I would say it's a PPP, pure promotional product, a shooting. Many people debunked lots of lies also in these reports of shootings, recognized some comedians. It's not clean, it's not very dirty. It looks like pushing the people to buy more weapons to make more business, because everything comes back to the money. At the end of the day, they don't feel having power if they don't have the money.
Well, there's no chance whatsoever of the United States Constitution changing on this, Nana. You would need a 2/3 majority in Congress to do so, and you couldn't get 15% of the Congress to vote to scrap that clause in the Constitution.
But they make the people feel that, like it's going to change and now and urgently, and something must be done about it. And then in the week after, if you look at the number of the sales, you'll see numbers speaks by themselves.
Yes.
And about Iran, I just wanted to make one point, very short one, about Iran. The only break for relieving Iran of this torture of 30 years and this oppression and this harassment, the only break is Israel. Don't look anywhere else. The Europeans want to do business. The Africans want to do business. Everybody wants to do business with Iran. Everybody is convinced that Iran has no intention of nuking half the planet. Everybody knows about that. Everybody is ready. All the big companies are ready with their contracts. Everybody is happy. The only thing is that since Iran will never say we will be friends with Israel, that would be the break.
Nana, a very, very powerful point and made brilliantly. Don't be a stranger. Come back soon. Shujat is also in the United Kingdom. Shujat, welcome.
Hello there, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, I'm good, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, I've been asked to comment on Iran. I would like to discuss something about that. It's about the sanctions on Iran, which obviously is part of the axis of evil, as you know, Zionists and all the agencies, the Saudis and these elements in the Middle East who are against Iran, view Iran as a threat. They're all after sanctions. I don't think there should be any sanctions at all. Iran is doing a fantastic job and should keep doing it. And anyone who's going for sanctions is actually trying to, side with the Zionists. Definitely is that. And I, for one, would not be supporting it at all. I don't know what you think, but that's my opinion.
I do think that that Israel is a major motor in the confrontation between the United States and Iran, as indeed it was in the previous era of the confrontation between the United States and Iraq, because they don't want, Israel doesn't want any Arab country or any Muslim country to be strong. They don't want them to have the means to stand up against them, to act as a countervailing force against them. But there's plenty of people in the United States who don't even need Israel's encouragement. Now look, I have to take a very short break, just 3 minutes, for a short news bulletin. We're discussing America, guns, Israel, and the issues of the day. So God willing, I'll still be here when you come back in just 3 minutes time from now. So please, don't go away. More here on Comment. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. This is the big conversation. It can be the great debate, but only if you call, email, text, SMS, or tweet, and the best of those will come up here on the comment wall. We're asking who wants more sanctions on Iran. Favourite so far is Israel, and I second that. There's no doubt that Israel and the pro-Israel lobby in the United States are driving this ridiculous chorus of hawkish demands that, having achieved a diplomatic breakthrough in the sense that the deadline for agreement has been extended on the nuclear question for another 7 months, thanks to skillful negotiation by the Iranian side principally, having got that, having staved off what would be a crisis in a world that's not short of crises, there are people out there demanding more sanctions. Well, there's the other subject of guns in America. If you're black, better not show up on the street in Barack Obama's United States of America. Why do Americans need so many guns? Ahmad is in Saudi Arabia. Always a pleasure to talk to the people there. Ahmad, welcome to the show. Ahmad, what a pity. We've lost Ahmad in Saudi Arabia. I hope nothing has happened to him by way of punishment for calling me. Let's go to Mehdi in London next. Mehdi, welcome.
Hello, sir.
Welcome, sir. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to talk about the sanction they want to talk about Iran, and I believe this is going to be by pressure by Israel, and then the others will follow as well, because it's got such a strong influence in the Western countries, and they have fears from the Israel. I don't know why is that, but they do have a fears.
Yeah, and we're talking about Western economies that are either in recession or about to go back into recession, on top of the slump that we have experienced since 2008. The German economy, for example, grew by just 0.1% in the last quarter, and may now go into reverse. The British economy, despite years of savage austerity and cuts, is, according to David Cameron at the G20, on the verge of going back into negative territory. You'd think they'd want more economic activity, not less, and yet they're willy-nilly handing out sanctions on Russia, on Iran, and some of them want more sanctions. I mean, when will the people in the Western countries stand up and say no? Mehdi?
Yes. Well, I think, the West even cut his own hand and just, whatever please the Israel as well.
Yeah, even when it's damaging to themselves.
Damaging their own economy and their own people as well.
Unbelievable. Mehdi, thanks for that call. We are talking about the chorus of demands for more sanctions on Iran, and we're asking what's going on in America. It's always been a violent place, but it seems to be getting more and more violent and more racially polarized. If you're black, you must now, if you're black and young especially, you must now run a very, very serious danger of being shot dead by the forces of law and order before they've even asked you a question. Now, this being the 21st century, I'm not just taking SMS and emails. I'm even taking tweets. And up here on the comment wall, here are one or two of the best of them. Let's see who's who. I think this is the first tweet we've put up. Ali Caleb says, I believe that the only nation that want more sanctions on Iran is Israel, because they want to be the only power in the Middle East. That's certainly true. Eldel, who's a follower of mine also, US acts as moral superior to the world while shooting black people, 12-year-olds executing teenagers, plus Palestine. Very well put, Eldel. And Alison Sessi, why do Americans need guns? Isn't it because the society lives in fear, always looking for the enemy within? Very good. I'm very happy that we've now got a Twitter wall as well as a comment wall. Well, these were all along the lines that I myself am thinking, but I'm wondering if there are other potential gainers from sanctions on Iran. Let's talk to Bruce in New York, though, which is not that far from the center of this problem. Bruce, go ahead, sir.
Hello, Sir George. On the first issue with Iran is an issue that I've been following for a long time, very closely. And it seems to me that Iran is on the verge of playing a larger role in the world. However, I'm calling about the other issue, the issue about violence, yeah?
Yeah.
And the best reading of this is that this is merely a continuation of the slave project, right? And it's rooted there. Even the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments really didn't make black people free. And there's a generalized thinking among police forces in this country. So it's not only race, but it's race mixed with a police culture. There's a certain police culture that you may even have black policemen doing the same thing.
Yeah, and, I've noticed that.
So we're dealing with the convergence of racism and a culture of blue, as it were, yeah? And then you have to see it in a wider context. You know, there's a generalized onslaught on black people in this country. If you look at places like Chicago, for instance, you know, Detroit, for instance, where schools are being closed down by the hundreds, yeah, under a black president, right? And whole communities are being what they call regentrified, meaning that you move black people and you sell off the infrastructure to white capitalists, yeah, and they transform this thing not for black people, yeah, and nobody cares where the blacks go, of course. So you have to see the willingness of white policemen and police forces in this country in general to kill black people willy-nilly for any, and this happens once every 2 days or so, yeah.
Yeah, so any minor infraction, or in the case of the 12-year-old boy, no infraction at all. Just shot dead in cold blood in seconds.
Precisely. Not only that, but it's done with an understanding that nothing will happen. I mean, this is the status quo, that this can be allowed to happen time and time again. And not only that, but we have a certain level of connivance on the part of people who call themselves leaders, like Al Sharpton and the like, yeah? And these guys play a political role for the Democratic Party, but they're not interested in changing the legal infrastructure in a way that this thing cannot happen again, right? So you see the type of collusion that's going on. So there are many forces at work here, right? But all the forces are
I was going to ask you on that very point, Bruce. It's not just that Barack Obama has been such a disappointment. The Black Caucus in Congress is a parade of colluders with the oppression of black people in the United States.
And worse, George. And sometimes they're worse than that, right? Sometimes they're worse. Sometimes they're worse than the Congress itself. You can't find these people unified on any front to defend black people against this thing, because once they believe if they speak out, they're speaking against their president, and they don't want to be seen as against the president, right?
Well, so the last people in America that are saying that, because Barack Obama has turned out to be a disastrous president, and I speak as someone who supported him in his run for the presidency.
Yes, Sir George. And if you you have the correct analysis of United States foreign policy, you only have to turn that inward, right? Because you cannot be fighting illegal wars and supporting ISIS abroad and expect to have a democracy at home.
Bravo.
These things cannot coexist.
Bravo.
They cannot coexist.
Bruce, a brilliant call. I want to hear from you regularly. Please stay tuned. That was Bruce in New York in an absolutely impeccable analysis of the prevailing political security situation in the United States and making the equation between what they do overseas and how their society is at home. How could it be different? It's the same as the idiots yesterday in Westminster who want to blame Facebook for extremism on the streets of London, talk about seeing the beam, the mote in the eye of the other without noticing the beam in your own eye. Lamine is in the UK on the same subject of the Americans and guns. Lamine, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Galloway. I just want to ask you a question. When would America and his puppet, European nation, would stop abusing black people? Since the slavery time, colonization time, killing all, they keep saying sorry. Can they understand every century or every 25 years they keep saying sorry?
Well, I don't actually hear them saying sorry. I certainly don't see them acting sorry. Look, as I put it in another broadcast on the hashtag Ask Galloway for Press TV just an hour ago, let me put it this way. There are too many white people who walk around feeling anxious and fearful about black people. When you look at the history, it's the black people who have a right to be anxious and fearful of the white people. There's only black people in America. There's only black people in the Caribbean. There's only black people in Britain. Because we were slavers. We stole the people from Africa. We chained them into ships. We sailed them across the oceans. And we tied them, chained them as beasts of burden on the plantations. It's black people who should be scared of us, not us who should be scared of black people. Let me go to Sheikh Rufel in New York. Sheikh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. So just to make a correction on my last name. The last name spelling would be Russell. And my second, it will be the point to this discussion, the gun problem in the United States.
Yeah.
You have already discussed everything, and previously guest already mentioned, but I want to just mention the 2 points. Number one is who benefiting from the gun selling and who is controlling this. As you know, the National Rifle Association, one of the most politically powerful advocacy group in the United States. These people have too much money, and they control, I would say, most of the Republicans, although I'm not politically affiliated with any political party. But if you look back, you will see the Republican governors and senators, they are always blindly supporting this NRA, the number one, and this is the way they're controlling our House of Congress. And this is why I am not seeing any common sense law. Before you sell any gun to someone, you should check their background. So this is a really existing problem, and I don't think there is any solution anytime soon. So
well, if you think about this vast increase in gun sales over the last few weeks and months, Sheikh, there can only be more shooting incidents. If you fill your society with more and more guns, then by the law of averages, some of those guns are going to be used in a school or a mall or a cinema to massacre people. That's leaving aside the police guns.
Yes, exactly. It's already happening. And now my fear is now the House of Congress is controlled by Republicans. They will take over very soon, I think in January. So this is going to really, I don't know, scary scenario in the coming days. Anyway, just on my second point would be, I just want to talk about the sanction on Iran. This is another problem, So some people say, if this sanction continue, who is benefiting? Even today's program also asking the same question. Now we have to go back to the historical perspective because Iran is the powerful country in that Middle East, and nobody wants to see them to grow up and be more powerful. Especially, there is some of guests already mentioned Israel, and there is more some other country, Gulf country. They are also trying to oppose. No matter what, Iran cannot compete with us. And this is the problem, And these people always supported by, I don't want to say that publicly, but these people is really dangerous. So what Iran is doing,
I need to press on.
I think they should continue to do it.
I need to press on, but I'm really grateful for your call. I hope you'll become a regular caller. Sheikh, in New York, that's the United States. Where else to go after that but Iran itself? Behruz is in Shiraz, in Iran. Go ahead, Behruz.
Hello there.
Go ahead, you're on the air.
Well, John, thank you very much indeed for having me on the program. I'd like to kick off by opining something germane to the first issue that you expatiated a bit at the rest of the program, and that's the sound to be intractable for the problem of Iran nuclear program. You see, the question is that if the sanctions have been imposed on Iran, where on earth they're coming from? I presume mostly they're coming from the international community rather than the U.S. So I do not think at all that the U.S. has to be lambasted or rebuked for imposing sanctions. But it is the international community who have lost trust in Iran. And I've got to say two things. Number one, why is it so? Why is it so that they have lost trust in Iran? Number one, why on earth, one may ask, why on earth they are just talking about Iran and no other country? We've got Pakistan, which is a nuclear nation. The problem is that I think Iran is the only country who have said that they did not recognize the statehood of Israel. And every now and then trying to threaten the existence of a country that has been recognized by the UN. Who the heck we are to say that we not recognize Israel? Israel has been recognized by the UN, number one. Number two, the United States with its allies can see that Iran is arming the Hezbollah. That is, willy-nilly, it is
I'm sorry, Behruz, I'm not actually following you any longer because of the quality of the phone line. I'm sorry for that. I want to try and get as many callers in as I can, so I'm going to go to Saleh in Tanzania. Go ahead, Saleh.
Hello, George. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Welcome. Go ahead.
Again, you see the sanction being put by the Jews is because they don't want Iran to progress. Now, the Iranians will never get approval by 5+1. Iran should go ahead with whatever plan they want to do. Let them produce a clear, peaceful thing. And at the same time, it is good that the sanction has been imposed on Iran, because Iran is asleep during Shah's time. Now they are fully awake. And alhamdulillah, they are making everything, they are producing everything, they are inventing
Well, that's
everything.
right, Saleh. In 33 years of ostracism and hostility, and in this latest period of open, overt sanctions, Iran has, necessity being the mother of invention, actually developed in many different ways, in leaps and bounds. And the fact that the Iranian people have retained their unity, that their revolution is untouchable by the enemies of that revolution, is a very great tribute to the people of Iran. And they will not compromise or give up their rights, the same rights that any other people have, for the peaceful use and development of nuclear energy and the concomitant development of enriched uranium thereby. I just need to correct you on one point. There are many Jews in Iran. In fact, there are more Jews in Iran than anywhere else outside of Israel in that region. And they live an honored life in Iran. They have special representation in parliament in Iran. And there are many, many Jews in the world who are against Israel. So we should never use this word Jews in a pejorative way. It's inaccurate, and it suits Netanyahu if we do. Amal is in Leicester. Go ahead, Amal.
Hello, George. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Good evening. Walaikum salam. Nice to hear from you again.
Nice to hear you, George, and really you're doing a great job. Nice to have you there. George, who has a benefit on Iran sanction? I like to talk really honestly. If Iran drops off the case of the Palestinian people, Iran will be accepted. Iran will be accepted in the society.
Yes.
And who is the first? That, George, that is the main goal. There is no second. Iran, why they are causing in the finger, they know Iran is the only nation, the only Muslim who will never give up the right of the Palestinian. If Iran back off, they will. It's the same what they done to Morsi when he came to president in Egypt. They call him in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and they say, which side are you? He was willing to have a really nice relationship with Iran. But after that, they say, no, you have to choose it, either with us or with Iran. And then he has to choose it. It's the same what they done to Khalid Mashal. Where do you want to be? With Syria, and they know it. Syria could not stand without Hezbollah and without Iran. And to Russia also, thank you to Russia that you stand also with the justice. But they know it. If Iran drops all these cases, Iran will be accepted, and they know that.
Well, you're absolutely correct about that.
Yes, and then Saudi Arabia will be forgotten.
That it's the entire story, because they don't actually want to see any Muslim country develop per se, irrespective of the Palestinian question. But the fact that for 33 years, the Iranian Revolution has faithfully supported the Palestinian cause is a major issue. Amal, I'm going back to the wall to take one or two last tweets of the evening. Thanks for your call, as always. Let's see one or two last tweets. I'm really keen on these tweets. Abid Hashmi, there must be a way of reining in the Israelis. So-called Muslim countries are useless. And Jack Tipple, another of my followers, US, Israel, have said Iran are an imminent threat in the years 79, 84, 92, 95, 98, 2002, 2004, 2006, 2009, and every year since. How fantastic a point that is. And here from our dear, late, deceased colleague, Serena Shim, her mother has tweeted, "Justice for Serena Shim." And we are determined, indeed, to get justice for her. She was, as you may recall, a redoubtable, fearless, and highly skilled correspondent of Press TV, who was covering the truth, that's all, in what's happening in Syria and across the border in Turkey. And for that, some of us believe she gave her life. You can continue the discussion on Twitter. Don't forget my new spot, which is #AskGalloway, and follow us on Twitter. Continue the discussion that we have launched this evening. It's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you. And if it was, come back next week, God willing, at the same time, same place, and bring someone else with you.
Hello, if you just comment the name and the place you left that number, and just make sure that your television volume's set to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirected me put through this phone number.